we like to talk to somebody either in the news or a big name and also let you ask some questions to them. Today, we're going to talk to Theo Paphitis. He's with me live in the studio. He chairs the stationery chain Ryman, the homeware specialist Robert Dias, and the lingerie retailer Boo Avenue. Have I pronounced that right?
Perfectly.
Thank God for
Perfectly,
that.
yeah.
But of course, people know you from Dragon's Den and your association with Millwall Football Club, and you've kind of become a bit of an institution, almost a national treasure, I think.
Oh, please.
Almost.
I've got to say, I was very, very disappointed a few weeks ago when I went to Retail Week, which is our industry rag, basically, at one of their functions, and they gave me Lifetime Achievement Award. I've never been so insulted in my life. I mean, does that mean it's over?
I had a similar experience about 6 months ago when I was called veteran broadcaster twice in the same day, and it had never happened before. That hurt.
I did have to explain there's plenty of miles left in me, and everyone better watch out.
Yeah, so watch out. Anybody that's calling in, he hasn't lost it, I can tell you. 0345 6060973 if you'd like to put a question to Theo Paphitis. Theo, I wanted to start on a slightly sad note because Hilary Devey, who was on Dragon's Den with you, she died at the weekend. And I interviewed her about 10 years ago when she brought out her autobiography. And the first time the interview had to be cancelled because my mum was dying. And I remember at the funeral, somebody said, "Have you seen that bunch of flowers down there?" And I went and looked at it, and it was from her. I'd never met her before. And I just thought, what a lovely thing to do. And then when I did interview her, I mean, she just charmed me. She was just wonderful.
Generosity of spirit, I think I used those words when I talked to the TV stations on the day she died. She was fab, absolutely fab. I mean, the team on Dragon's Den were pretty well established. We were all mates. We all knew each other. We all knew each other's idiosyncrasies. So whenever you get a new dragon in, it's always very difficult for them to bed in, settle down and everything else. So we didn't, and they don't actually tell you. I mean, so all of a sudden somebody turns up and there she was, this vision, great big long hair, shoulder pads straight out of Dallas with her northern accent, gravelly voice, great determination that you can't put a measure on. She sat down and we all went, "Oh, right, what's this all about?"
And you seriously didn't know?
No, seriously. It was pretty amazing. Anyway, she just commanded her seat straight away. And whether you agreed with her, disagreed with her, you couldn't help but like her. And she very, very quickly became, she only did two series with us, but she became very quickly part of the team. And, you know, we all saw what she was made of. And I keep telling people, yes, she was a successful business person, woman. But not only that, she was a successful business woman in an incredibly tough male industry.
She ran a pallet company, didn't she? I mean, it doesn't get much more masculine than that.
I mean, it absolutely. And I think the only regrets I have is I wish I'd met her earlier. She was a great girl, very generous, very down to earth, called it as it was. You knew exactly where you were with her, and she was incredibly thoughtful. So only great words to say about her, and I'm sure she'll be sadly missed by everybody, especially obviously
absolutely. Let's talk about being an entrepreneur, because I think a lot of people imagine when they see you on Dragon's Den or Question Time or wherever you happen to be, they think, well, he's incredibly successful. He's built up businesses. He runs big businesses now. He obviously comes from that world. Well, you genuinely don't, do you?
No, I came from the wrong side of the tracks, Ian. So we emigrated. Yes, we were. I'm a first-generation immigrant, came to this country at the age of 6, lived in Manchester for a few years, in a place called Gorton. Those of you who know where Gorton is will know that if the world was going to have an enema, Gorton would be where the tube would be inserted. It was a rough place in the early 60s, still had bomb shelters. So I sound incredibly old now, but it hadn't had a penny spent on it since the Second World War. It was rough. And we only ended up in London by accident because my father had an accident, a very bad accident, which put him in hospital for 6 months. So we had to stay, and he was critical, so we had to stay here looking after him. And Mum really looked after us. She had to sell everything we had in Manchester, rent some rooms here. And then when Dad came out of hospital, sadly, damage was done, and they couldn't reconcile themselves. So they got divorced, lived with Mum. He's a musician trying to make ends meet. It was incredibly tough. I had free school dinners, free bus pass to get to school, and I was made by this nation, a very compassionate nation, an understanding nation. I've seen nothing but kindness from this nation, which is why I'm still here, living here, paying my tax here, growing my businesses here, because I really do believe this is one of the best countries in the world, and it's given me opportunities, and I've done as much as I can, whenever I can, to actually share that with other kids that need encouragement to see that you can. Social mobility is the hardest thing in the world.
You're Chancellor of a university now, aren't you?
I am at Solent University. But yeah, and I'm a Chancellor of Solent University, and I've got a Scottish certificate in colouring in maps. That's my total qualification. I mean, you couldn't make it up, really. But I love being at the university. I love talking to the kids. And I love talking about social mobility and everything we can do to help that along.
Do you think that sometimes we are obsessed with all the things wrong with the country, and sometimes we don't celebrate the fact that this is a great country, but we just concentrate on all the problems?
I think it's that sense of fair play that Great Britain has. United Kingdom has always had this sense of fair play. So when we don't see fair play, we put our hands up in horror and we can't believe it, and we can't help calling it out when it's there. Whether it's in normally we're calling it out when it's in another country. Sadly, very recently, we're calling it out within the United Kingdom, and that's the frustrating thing, that we're having to do that. And hopefully we can get over that and get back to the reality of and the truth about what makes this country so brilliant, whether you're a first-generation immigrant, whether you were born here, whether you're second generation, third generation, because the opportunities in this country have always been there.
Have you always been an entrepreneur? Did you have to learn it, or is it something that just comes naturally? I mean, can you learn to be a business person?
Business isn't complicated here. People who complicate business is people. It's not complicated. Business is just pure logic. So as I said, I've got no official qualifications. I found business quite easy. I'm dyslexic, so there was no chance of me doing any qualifications and exams in my day. I was just thick at school, and I got put in a thick class, and that was it. They wouldn't invest any time or money on me because there was other kids that were going to get some qualifications. Everybody's got a bit of entrepreneur in them, right? Everybody's got a bit of Del Boy in them. But most importantly, I think if you look at it, I love football, as you know. We've got Premiership football players, we've got Championship football players, we've got football players that ply their trade in League One, ply their trade in League Two, in the Conference, all at different levels, but they're all football players. So we've all got that in us. It's just people do it at different levels.
But do you think that the country is missing out on a lot of entrepreneurial talent because it isn't brought out of people in the way that it might be in the world of football? I mean, if you're good at football, you'll probably succeed at some kind of level. But there are probably thousands of people listening to this programme now who could be very successful entrepreneurs, but they don't know it.
Okay, so you're absolutely right. Football has got the most amazing scouting system. If you're any good at football, I promise you, somebody will see you and scout you, whether you're playing in a park or playing for a team. You're absolutely also right that until very recently, and I will give credit to Dragon's Den, not because I've been on it, but and The Apprentice, of course, but since we've started having business programs on TV and showing the simplicity and the ability that you can have. Being an entrepreneur was never a vocational career that you could choose to do. You could not go to your teacher and say, excuse me, miss, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. She would have said, what is that? Go and do your exams and behave yourself. Go to university, do this. It now is a career for people because they've seen it on TV. They've seen how it works. And people are a lot more aware, especially the kids. My mailbags are 70% school kids.
That's actually really encouraging, isn't it? Because that wouldn't have happened when I was at school.
No, it wasn't there when I was at school, but it is now, far more aware.
When do you think you got your first break, or was it a break that you made for yourself?
Wow. I think I was always looking for breaks. And, it's that old adage, I struck lucky. But surprisingly, the harder I worked, the luckier I got. And that's the point. I think it just doesn't come. You're not going to sit in a bath and have a eureka moment. You'll just get shriveled up and very cold as the water gets cold, right? You've got to have the breaks, but you've got to be in the position to see the breaks. And you've got to be looking for them. And you've got to be out there. And for me, I had those breaks. My ambition was to own my own home. I lived in a council tenement block where the ice was on the inside of the windows. It wasn't great. And the stairs smelt of urine. It wasn't great, but it was home. And we had food. So, and I had some education. But my ambition was if you'd have asked me, what's your greatest ambition in those days? It was actually to be able to have a house, buy my own house. And, I'd walk or drive, I'd be driven past houses and think, wow, if only that I could ever have one of those. So those are the sort of things that I aspire to very, very early on. And so to get a job was the biggest difficulty for me because I'm dyslexic. 100 applications, 3 replies, all of which were bugger off. The others just didn't bother. So, I got a job purely because the government at the time was subsidising businesses that would employ anybody who's not had a job before, so they would pay their wages for a year. So I got a job in insurance, Lloyd's of London insurance brokerage, as an assistant to the T-boy and filing clerk. I'm dyslexic, so you can guess how that went down. Not very well. So I lasted exactly a year, the amount of money that the government were prepared to pay. So get a job, have a house, maybe own a car. That's as far as it went. It's only until you get going and you see things and you are ambitious and hungry. And for me, I've got itchy bum. I can't sit down. I've always got to be doing something. And that I just carried on.
And when was the first time that you thought to yourself, you know what, I've made it?
I'll let you know.
That's a trite answer. Come on, look, you are very successful. There must have been one. Was it when you bought your first house? Because, that was one of your ambitions. And I know the first time I bought my first flat, I was actually quite scared because I thought, well, can I actually afford this? But that moment that you put the key in the door for the first time, lots of thoughts go through your head.
So I'm a young man. I have got myself a job. I've done a few things in the meantime. I got myself a job with a business in London. I've got part of the equity in the West End. So I've gone from a small office in Croydon to Manchester Square. I've got myself a Porsche, but it's a 944. It's not
terribly common.
Yeah. I got myself a Porsche. I'm earning £30,000 a year.
When was this? What year?
This was 1985. £30,000 a year.
I was only £6,000 a year.
And I've got to tell you, driving to work with the windows open, music blaring, thinking, I've cracked it. I've got a Porsche. I got myself a Rolex watch. I didn't have a file of facts quite at that time.
But you were a bit flash.
I did. Oh, listen, every kid. If you're having, you've got to aspire to things. And then as you learn later on, I'm now aware, from having these great watches, I'm now aware, as you can see, something very digital. Life moves on. But that was an ambition, an achievement to have. So I think at that stage, I felt, wow, I've cracked it. But then very quickly, that was never going to be enough. And now what I do, I get up in the morning, not because I want to make money. I get up in the morning because I want to do what I want to do. The money's a byproduct. It's a scorecard. So you do your tax at the end of the year. Your accountant tells you what you owe. You get a pat on the head. Boy, done good. But that's not what gets you out of bed in the morning. It gets you out of bed in the morning do what you do and enjoy what you do.
My producer just told me I need to go to a break because I've lost all track of time because it's so interesting talking to you. Theo, we're going to talk a lot more in just a moment, and we'll come to your calls too. It's 18 minutes past 8.
This is LBC. This is LBC with Iain Dale. Call 0345 6060 973.
It's 20 past 8 on LBC. Theo Paphitis is with us. We're going to come to your calls in a moment. 0345 6060 973. Just on what we were talking about before there, somebody sent in a text saying, my only ambition was to have a nice car. I now own my own train company through sheer determination.
Bravo.
Do you think, this word aspire, which you've used a couple of times, do you think, again, that there are so many people who, maybe this has gone on throughout history, but I still think it's a phenomenon now, where people accept what they think is their job, their lot in life?
Oh, most definitely. And that's sometimes the hardest thing to break. I mean, there's people out there that aspire to be world king.
It's strange that we're going to come on to that in a moment.
And and there's people out there that aspire to just go home, have their supper, put the slippers on, watch TV, and are happy with their lot. We're all made very, very differently. Thank God we're all made very differently. Because imagine loads of me, that'd be a disaster. So we're all made very, very differently, and that's what makes everything work.
But 30, 40, 50 years ago, people would have had parents, grandparents, great-grandparents who all did the same jobs, and they would be expected to go into the same line of work, whether it's down the mine, the docks, wherever, farming, which was my background. All my family came from a farming background. And that has started to erode, hasn't it?
Oh, most definitely. I mean, my mother was a seamstress, so there was no way I was
you were
going to
never going to do that.
That could be useless at that.
A Millwall supporting seamstress.
Don't even go there. I know exactly what's going through your mind, and don't go there because we're still friends at the moment. So, much maligned Millwall, may I just add at that stage for the public.
Come on, you irons.
And so they did. But now, social mobility, the digital world is definitely a revolution as far as social mobility is concerned. And that's been the biggest accelerator of the last 20, 25, 30 years in this country. Before that, you're absolutely right. You didn't leave the town you were born in, mainly. You didn't go abroad. You went doing the same job. If your dad worked in that warehouse, you got your job in there when you left school, or worked in mill, or worked somewhere else, or a factory, or you got your job to go there. And that's how it worked.
Most successful people have had adversity in their lives. So I was reading an article the other day that most successful business people, or indeed politicians, people who become prime minister, president, they've often experienced trauma in their lives or some sort of setback. Does that apply to you?
Oh, yes. And anybody who says they haven't has been incredibly blessed or a liar. Absolutely. In business and as an entrepreneur and in life, things go wrong. You make decisions and they don't always work out. You make decisions with the information you've got, the calls you've got to make. Things change. And I can tell you a true event, my event, and for me, I was very lucky again. It happened very early in my life. And I was barely 30, done incredibly well. I had 3 children at the time. We'd bought this fantastic house in Surrey, electric gates, indoor swimming pool, tennis court, God knows how many loos, snooker room. I mean, I'd made it. I'd arrived. Absolutely. A year after we bought this house, I went home and Mrs. P was cooking for the kids, doing the supper, but doing homework, everything that goes on in a household with kids. And I remember, because she was cooking chips and it absolutely stunk that. I don't know what happened to the extractor fan there, but I can smell it now walking in. And it was the hardest thing I thought I would have to ever tell her, which was, and I said to her, you know this house? And she said, yes. I said, you know we own it jointly? And she said, yes. I said, no, jointly with the bank. And she said, right. I said, well, they'd like their money back. And she carried on cooking and said, never really liked it anyway. And we had to sell it. It was the crash of the late 80s, early 90s. Practically lost everything. We had to sell the house. There was a little bit of equity left. And I had a chauffeur at the time as well. And I remember he helped us move and everything else. And he called the new house we moved to a doll's house. That's how the differential was. And that was a great sobering moment for anybody. It certainly was for me, and made me realise that things can go down as well as up. And I was very, very lucky. It happened at a very early age, and I was able to regroup, get my stuff together again, and go again.
And has that influenced your thinking later in life, where you've thought, well, that can't happen again, so whatever assets I've got to make sure that if the worst happened, I can still provide for my family in the way that I want to?
Never bet the farm.
Yeah,
I think is the adage there. And absolutely far more cautious. And I don't actually take risks. I take calculated risks, more so than ever before. So, and it's about doing your homework in business. And once you learn that lesson, and look, if you go to a casino and you start counting cards, they'll throw you out. If you're playing blackjack, they'll throw you out because you're trying to push the odds in your favour. In business, it's not illegal. Getting the odds in your favour is exactly what you need to do. And that means knowing more about what you're doing than your competitor.
And of course, your biggest asset in virtually any business is the people that you employ. And I mean, in all the different businesses that you've created, that you've run, how do you motivate your employees to do the best that they can? Because I come across so many businesses where I look at the decisions that they make, and the employees seem to be almost incidental. And I'm thinking, if you treat your employees well, they're going to add at least 10 or 20% to their productivity, and they will do a much better job for you than if you treat them as if they're some sort of lower form of human life.
Well, having started from the shop floor, literally, I promise you, I've never underestimated the people that put food on my table, which are my store staff, and that's been always from day one. And I've always sided with them against management, against buying departments, ops departments, you name it. I've always sided with those. But at the end of the day, without those people and the rest of the team, right up to director level, listen, I haven't achieved what I've achieved because it's me. I've achieved it because I've got a great group of people, 4,500 of them, that make it happen for me every single day of the year, 365 days of the year. And if you don't show appreciation for that, then guess what? It's not going to happen. And lots of the businesses I've owned for a very, very long time. And I've got colleagues who've worked with me for a very long time. And you can't always be everything to everybody. Sometimes some people have to leave and be flower in somebody else's garden, that they're never going to be a flower in your garden. So you have to accept that as well. But we've got to remember who makes a business tick, and that is the people inside those businesses. So for me, my colleagues come first, the customer comes second. Because if I can keep my colleagues happy, they can keep the customer happy.
When you go about your business, I mean, you're a very recognisable face. I presume that you're stopped quite often on the street. You're on the media quite a lot, talking about business, the excitement, the pros and the cons. And yet a lot of people in your position in other companies, senior business people, they tend to shy away from the media. And I always think that's a shame, because people need to understand more about the world of business. And you're a cheerleader for the world of business. Do you wish other people would sort of come along and help out a little bit?
Oh, no. We're all made very differently. So until really I did Dragon's Den, I didn't really have any experience of doing media or television or anything else. But I'm not an actor. I can only do one thing. I play one part, me. That's it.
That's like most actors, frankly. But,
that's so I can be passionate about what I'm passionate about. I can't be passionate about West Ham. That would never happen in a million years.
you can leave that to me.
Right? Exactly. I mean, someone's got to do it. But so that's all I can be, and it's up to other people to be passionate about what they're really passionate about.
Well, we've got another half an hour with Theo, and we're going to come straight to your calls after the news. And we've got a great email here from Anand, which I'll read out now, and then you can rehearse your answer to this one.
Okay.
This is Anand in West London. Would Theo let Boris Johnson run one of his companies? If yes, why? And if no, why? Prepare yourselves for the answer.
Dear.
It is 8:30 on LBC News Headlines. Lottie Morley.
Boris Johnson's ethics advisor says he quit because he believed the Prime Minister was planning to deliberately break the ministerial code. In his resignation letter, Lord Geit said he was put in an impossible and odious position over a trade issue. A review into abuse in British gymnastics has found young athletes were starved, body-shamed and excessively punished. QC Anne White's reports examined more than 400 complaints. And Kevin Spacey is free to fly back to the US after appearing in court in the UK to face 3 allegations of sexual assault. Westminster Magistrates Court heard how the Oscar-winning actor strenuously denies the accusations. LBC weather, a mild and humid night for many. Outbreaks of rain pushing eastwards across Scotland and Northern Ireland with a low of 11 degrees.
This is LBC. Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
8:33 is the time on LBC. Theo Paphitis is with us. We're going to come to your calls now. 0345 6060 973. Antin Sittingbourne says, my mum sat at a wedding next to Theo probably 20 years ago at a mutual friend's. She asked Theo what he did, not knowing who he was. And he humbly said, I'm a shopkeeper. She still talks about it when he pops up on TV. Lovely man. I think that's great. You clearly didn't even let on after you'd said that.
But it's the truth. That's what I do. I am a shopkeeper. That's it.
Quite a big one. Right. Annan in West London says, would Theo let Boris Johnson run one of his companies? If yes, why? And if no, why?
God, I don't know how to say this. He doesn't qualify for many, many reasons. Unconscious incompetence, hubris by the bucket load, bad cocktail, and the lack of the ability to tell the truth. Dishonesty in a retail environment is not good. So all those things doesn't qualify him to be a shopkeeper.
Or indeed run any business, I guess.
Correct.
But he's running the country.
Sadly. And can we just say, sadly, can we just point that out to all those Tory cabinet ministers that are supporting him and all those Tory MPs that supported him? Because when the music stops, they're all going to be tainted in the same light. And so many of those people are not like him at all.
But he has delivered Brexit, which you argued for, but your stance on that has changed somewhat.
No, it hasn't changed at all. He delivered Brexit. Did he deliver Brexit? He delivered a type of Brexit which said, I'll sign anything. It doesn't matter about the detail. I'll worry about it later. And we're going to pay the price for that. That's not delivering the Brexit that we wanted. He delivered a Brexit. And Brexit has happened, and it's been a very divisive event in our modern history, to be honest with you, which has changed the face of politics, and it's changed the way people act towards each other.
But you don't regret supporting it?
Not at all. Not at all. And
but you blame him for the way that things have developed over the last 3 years?
Well, I actually wrote a very firm article the day afterwards, which is on my website, theopaphitis.com, which said, it's done now, and whether it's the right decision or the wrong decision will depend purely on the quality of our politicians. And that was then. He's failed that particular test.
Some people would say that failure was always inevitable, though.
I don't think so. Do we need to fight everybody? Well, I mean, do we need to fight everybody, aggravate everybody, because it suits our political stance and fester and foster a divisional hatred type society, which this country has never been known for. I started off earlier on saying I owe everything to this country. And that's why I'm still here, pay my taxes here, make my living here. My children are growing up here. And it's never been like that. There's been difficult moments. But you could have a debate with somebody, argue with somebody, and you still remain friends afterwards. This present government seemed to work the Trump way of being divisive and everything. I mean, the dead cat's been thrown absolutely everywhere as a distraction, as to cause division between families, between people, between businesses. I mean, the only thing he has delivered, in fairness, since is what he said, those famous words, F business. He's actually managed to deliver that. He's done very well on that front. And for me, that's about the only thing I think he's delivered.
And you say that as somebody who, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you have been a Conservative supporter in the past.
I've made donations to all parties, actually, in fairness. I'm not, you won't find me being partisan. Even if it's a crap Tory government, I'll call it a crap Tory government. It's a crap Labour government. It's a crap Labour government. Am I now saying, oh, let's kick the Tories out and put Labour in? No, I'm not. I'm not saying that at all. The Tories have got a job to do. Do I think Labour would do it any better. If I'm honest with you, Ian, at the moment I can't say Labour would do it any better. But I do believe the Tories are much better than this.
What do you think of Keir Starmer?
If you'd asked me that...
What job would you give him in one of your companies?
Oh, he would get a job. He would get a job. Would he get the leadership job? The very senior leadership job? Possibly not.
Why?
Again, his disappointment for me is, conviction politics is really important. And I'm struggling to see what his convictions are. I'm not going to go and start criticising his performances in Parliament, this, that and the other. But you remember we talked about passion earlier, and people can be passionate about the things they're passionate about. So it's actually quite easy. I struggle to see that in him.
OK, let's go to the calls. James is in Leeds. Hello, James.
Hi, good evening.
What would you like to ask Theo?
First, I'd just like to say it was funny the point you mentioned earlier about people not working in the same industry as the family and things. I've recently quit my job and joined the family business, so I found that a little bit funny.
Good luck.
The question I had was, what's the biggest failure you faced in your sort of business life, and how did you overcome it, and how did you sort of keep on going, pick yourself up?
Well, strange. Now, we just talked about it earlier. Biggest failure. I had to sell my house. And
what's your second biggest failure then?
I've had loads. Listen, I've had loads.
What's the worst day in the office?
Listen, the worst. One of the worst days in the office, quite frankly, was on that fateful day in March 2020, when we had to send an email and a ring around to all our stores and say, prepare the stores tonight to be mothballed. We're shutting until further notice. Because as shopkeepers, all our money comes from our stores and our online businesses and everything else. If you lose your income, we can't last very long. So I actually didn't know when I went home that night, and I was talking to Mrs. P, and she said, well, when are you opening up? I said, I have no idea. She said, well, what's going to happen? I said, I have no idea. She said, well, how are you going to pay the bills? I said, I've really not got any idea. I said, oh, right, what would you like for tea?
What did you say?
As it happens, I said, you know what I'd really like? I said to her, something I'm not often allowed to have. I said, I'd really like some fish and chips. And that's exactly what we had. And
I mean, how many stores, between your various businesses, how many actual physical stores have you got across the country?
About 360, 70, something.
Because the overheads on those, if you've got no income coming in.
No income coming in.
I can't even contemplate what
we were
that
insolvent. We became insolvent overnight, or most businesses did. We're a private family business. We're not a big public business. So we were insolvent overnight. So that was an incredibly sobering time.
Was there a point in the whole pandemic where you thought, we're not going to come through this?
No. Absolutely not. If I started beginning to think that would have been that would have been tricky. But no. But I was aware very quickly that the only way we're going to come out of this is if we found a vaccine or a treatment. Without a vaccine or a treatment, we weren't going to come out of it.
James, thank you very much for your call. I'm getting loads of texts and tweets from people who've worked with you or for you over the years, and not a single negative one.
I'm sure there'll be some.
I've got one here.
Mrs. P be on in a minute.
Alex Borelli. I don't know if you remember Alex Borelli. Says, I advised you years ago at Lawrence Proust with my analyst friend John McCready. So he said, well done on your successful career.
Thank you, Alex.
So loads of those coming in. Let's go to Ben, who's a new caller in Wigan. Hello, Ben.
Hi, guys. You all right?
Hi. What would you like to ask?
So my question is in regards to the old 4-day work week, which is a very hot topic at the moment. So I think it was only about 3 years or so ago that Corbyn was discussing the 4-day work week, and he was absolutely panned for it. But we're seeing more and more companies who are struggling to hire, and especially my LinkedIn is always popping off with requests from recruiters who are advertising 4-day work weeks. And I wanted to know what your opinions were on the shorter working week and more time at the weekend or more time with the family or on the course or whatever.
So I'm not quite sure what it means. I mean, does it mean you give me 4 days work and I'll pay you for 5?
Yes. Because there are trials going on in 70 companies at the moment to see whether this works. In France, I think they started it quite a long time ago.
That's brilliant, because it means I must have at least 20% growth in my business then. I'm feeling better already. I can get 20% more productivity. And if I can get 20% more productivity, would be a lot healthier, do better. I can afford to pay people more money as well. I'm not sure how it works. Listen, I have an open mind on everything. And that's something I learned very early on. Do I think it's viable? I don't think so. I'm happy to be proven wrong. I'm happy to have an open mind on it. But I don't see how you're going to get the same productivity on 4 days as you get in 5 days. Unless, of course, you're improductive in the first place. Or unproductive even. No such word as unproductive.
Of course, the kind of businesses that you run, or certainly the most famous ones, I mean, your shop workers cannot work from home.
I mean, so what am I going to say? You can't come into my shop on a Friday because my staff have got the day off.
But what,
Well, I think you'd rotor it so that obviously you did have staff in on the Friday and then some might be off on the Monday.
Oh, so that's how you would do it. But then you'd need more staff, wouldn't you?
It depends if you've not got enough staff to cover the floor or not, I guess.
Well, no, you would definitely.
I don't know. I work from home, so I don't work in a retail business.
That's probably why. But if you're efficient at the moment, you've got your staff rotated to cover your stores for 5 days efficiently, profitably. If you then they can only work 4 days, then you're going to have to take on more staff. But you've had no saving in wage roll, so now you've got to increase your wage roll by 20% at least. Well, if I increase my wage roll by 20%, I'd have to make some redundancies. Then how does that work? It might work for some people. It doesn't work for everybody.
Well, it's going to be very interesting to see the result of these trials that are going on at the moment. Ben, really good question. Thank you very much. We'll come to more questions to Theo Paphitis in just a moment. You're listening to Iain Dale on LBC. It's 8:45.
LBC. Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
New measures are on the way as regards rental of property. Landlords prevented from evicting tenants in England without giving a reason. This government, they're obsessed with the idea of all landlords being bad. I remind you, 65% of the rental market is made up of people who have 2 properties or fewer. A couple get together. So tell you what, why don't I move into your place and we'll rent out your little place? And that property will be our pension. That's what people do. It's not a crime.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Back tomorrow morning from 7. Listen on your radio and on Global Player. LBC. leading Britain's conversation. Iain Dale. Tweet at LBC.
It's 8:48 on LBC, listening to Iain Dale with Theo Paphitis. It's that point in the hour where I think, I'd like to do this for another hour after this. And we've got some great calls coming in. We'll come back to them in just a second. Just on this text, though, from somebody who's anonymous, says, can you ask Theo about imposter syndrome? I came from a council house, poor background. All males joined the building trade on tools. I now own a building product company, doing well, but still question whether I belong in the room when having meetings with construction executives. That is so common. I completely relate to that.
Can I just say, the minute you said that, I could feel the hairs on the back of my arms coming up, because we all suffer from it.
Yeah.
I suffer from it. I've always suffered from it. And it's one of those weird things that you just, it's got, I'm very fortunate. I come from a stable home background. I've got Mrs. B bashing me around the head with a frying pan, keeping my feet on the ground. But there's times when, you're in a TV studio or you're something like this and you think, I don't deserve to be here. Or you're sitting with a senior politician and you think, I've got a Scottish certificate in colouring in maps. What am I doing here?
I had one of those moments last week.
Go on.
On the night that Boris Johnson had the vote of confidence, I was presenting this programme with Andrew Marr.
Right.
And I'm thinking, it's my programme and I'm presenting it with Andrew Marr.
Legend.
And he's not the lead presenter on it. And I was thinking, am I worthy? And I know people think that's ridiculous, having done this for 12 years,
true.
but I think most successful people have that feeling, and you're not alone, whatever your name is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, let's go to another call. Richard is in Wandsworth. Hello, Richard.
Hi, Ian. Hi, Theo.
Hi, Richard.
Hi. I'm what you would regard as a entrepreneur. I'd like to call myself that. I have been for many, many years, and I decided that I would give it up, go into corporate to learn some skills and get some experience. I've now, since COVID, which has been kind to me, decided to go back in and have another crack at it. So I've got a ethical coffee business with Premier League potential, looking for seed and growth funding.
Wrong show.
And I'm not asking for any investment. What I was actually going to ask at the moment is a question, actually, which is, what's your view on ethical, sustainable businesses? Because it seems to be on trend. There's lots of talk around ethical business, sustainability, saving the planet, etc., etc. And I just wanted to know what the situation was with regards to funding companies like mine who sit in that world, because I've found it a challenge getting funding.
Well, getting funding full stop at the moment is a challenge, but ESG, corporate social responsibility, all these things are really important to banks at the moment and funders. And you find a lot of institutions are looking at businesses. And when you apply for a loan, there is a whole section now as a business where you've got to explain your environmental credentials and your sustainability credentials and your ethical credentials. So it is becoming very, very important part of all our lives. And so it should be. My only concern is when things get tough, a bit like organic food, everybody was happy to pay a little bit more for organic food. We got ourselves into difficulties in 2008 and all of a sudden everybody went away from it. Is people do vote with their pocket. So it's been able to afford it. And the job of government is to make sure that the things that we need to do to save our planet and save the future for our kids and our grandkids is to make sure there's a system and the environment in place where it makes sense to think environment and to think corporate social responsibility as the first thing. And that can be done by creating an environment which makes it affordable.
Okay.
Richard, thank you very much indeed. Tony says, please could you ask Theo who his favourite dragon was in the den and who he wasn't particularly fond of?
Well, who can I say my favourite dragon is? My favourite dragon always was and always will be.
Go on.
Deborah Meaden.
Really?
Yeah, Deborah's been brilliant. And obviously Peter Jones now is probably going to take a knife to himself and he's going to be so upset. I'm surprised he doesn't call in.
He may ring in
He
a
will
minute.
ring in any minute and say, what do you mean? Now, I think Deborah's brilliant. She was brilliant when I was in the show. She's been brilliant since I've gone. She's a great dragon, great person. That's it. I've made it public now. Sorry, Pete.
Least fond one, or is that unfair?
I think that's unfair. We've had a few.
Okay,
We've had a few.
I'm not going to.
In fairness, we have had a few mingers as well. So it wouldn't be fair.
Okay. Too many to mention, obviously. Right, Dave's a new caller in Newbury. Hello, Dave. Oh,
Dave from Newbury.
Yeah.
Is Dave from Newbury after a marmalade sandwich?
I'd always have a marmalade sandwich any time of day, especially in the morning, that's for sure. I was just calling really because I know how important family is to you and from you reading your book, and I was just wondering what lessons you would take from bringing up your big family into the world of business.
Wow, well, business is a family. I often say my business is a family business, and that's it. It's not a public company. The only other people that own shares in my business, other than my family, is the people I work with. So it's their family business as well. And that's how we treat it. And like all families, you have good times, you have bad times, you have some difficult times, you work together, you are aligned, and you get over it. And business is no different.
And how have you sort of brought those sort of ethics into your children? Because, I mean, often when you're a child of a fantastically rich parent or famous parent, sometimes, shall we say, the instinct is, I've got a nice life, I don't really need to do anything myself.
I think
I'll inherit it all.
I think mine treat it more like I've got an embarrassing parent. So I've got Dominic, who's the oldest, then Zoe, then Alex, and twins, Annie and Holly. I think probably to a man and a woman, they sort of duck when any limelight shines. But
it's quite difficult for children of successful parents, isn't it? Because there's always that feeling, well, I need to emulate my father or my mother.
But you know what? That's the first thing I told mine not to do, is they've got to follow their passion, wherever their passion is. I remember my oldest daughter, Zoe, when she wanted to go into acting, and I spent all night convincing her that she needed to go to university after her A-levels. And we went to bed about 3:00 in the morning. I could see she wasn't best pleased, but she agreed to follow my advice. And in the morning on the way to work, I rang her up and said, you know everything I said last night? It was rubbish. Forget it. You go and do what you want to do. Follow your passion. And I think it's important.
Did she?
Yes, she did. She did. So, and it's important for people to follow their passion, because if you follow your passion, you're likely to be good at what you decide to do. And be happy. More importantly, be happy, because you're a long time doing work stuff.
Yeah.
So you better be enjoying it.
Yeah, quite. I wonder if you did a poll of people, how many people would say they actually enjoyed their day job? What percentage? I've got no idea what it would be. But there we go. Jay is in St Ives. Hello, Jay.
Oh, hi, Ian. Hi, Theo. Mr. Paphitis.
Hi, Jay.
I just wanted to ask you, you're one of my favourite dragons, so Ian is one of my favourite presenters. And what I wanted to ask you is, with all these regulations right now, over-regulations, and all the restrictions in business, and there's online businesses, everything happening, do you think you could have made it?
Oh, I think...
could you be so successful now with 2022?
Oh, listen, absolutely. There is so much opportunity now. There's even more opportunity than there was when I was around. When people ask me, you can be a world-class retailer supplying products to people, to a worldwide market from your bedroom. You couldn't do that before. Before, you used to have loads of shops, trucks, warehouses, and everything else. There's so many opportunities now. The digital age and digital world has certainly opened up a whole sphere of new opportunities.
Jay?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jay. Quickly to Lawrence in Wembley. Lawrence, hi, what would you like to ask?
Hi, good evening, gentlemen, and good evening, Theo.
Good evening.
I could relate to what you've been talking about. I left school at 15 and went into retail jewellery. And at the age of 18, I decided that I'd buy a van and do the markets and go all around the country. At 21, I was skint and went back into retail jewellery and finished up managing a jeweller's. And it was my most successful period from the age of 21 to 29. And I had the same aspirations as you. I had nothing at 21, but I wanted my own flat. I wanted I wanted an XJ6.
Lawrence, we need to get to your question because we've reached the end of the hour.
Yeah, okay. My question is, Theo, do you think the government should immediately reinstate the triple lock on the pensions? Because with inflation going to 11%, I think the government should immediately do this for the pensions.
Theo?
Lawrence is the reason why they took it off in the first place. But this is a long conversation, and I don't think it can be taken in isolation on its own because there are a lot of other things that come into this discussion. But, I'm not going to protect the government here or make excuses for them, but it's a very difficult balancing job that every chancellor and every government, whether you like them or not, have to do, and you've got to take things in the round.
I'm going to finish off with a text from Tracy in Brockley who says, Theo is right about his staff. About a year ago, I popped into Ryman's in Blackheath to get some coloured card and nothing else. The manager and I were having such a lovely chat that when I told him about my secret love of stationery, he suggested that in return for a bit of discount, I might want to stock up and treat myself. I came out with the card, printer paper and accessory for my mobile phone, pens and God knows what else. I would recommend that and Ryman's in general because of how I was looked after. So that's your first phone call tomorrow. Gold star for the manager of Ryman's in Blackheath.
Excellent. We'll be on it. Thank you very much for that.
Listen, it's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you come back again because I know our listeners have enjoyed hearing from you. Thank you very much, Theo.
It's been a pleasure being here, Ian.